What it's all about, the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a horror film director, no other than Mr. Jason Morris.
Hello, how's it going?
Oh, fabulous, fabulous, and busy, Mr. Jason. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a filmmaker. I've been making movies for about 20 some odd years now. Um, Anywhere from horror films, documentaries. We've got YouTube stuff that we do as well. Um, and Yeah, I mean that's pretty much been what I've been up to for the past 20 something years. Primarily an editor on the side. So that's where I my bread and butter is kind of that's the editing side of stuff. But I've got some partners in a production company, Resurrection Films, and we also have another company called Dead End Films with a couple additional partners. And So we're out there just doing a lot of indie filmmaking.
In the filmmaking, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Jason. And today, let's talk about making movies and gas money, the art of micro budget filmmaking. So, tell us, embracing limitation for this advocacy is something else. Many see as a tiny budget as a barrier, but you call it an art. How does the constraint of gas money actually force more creative and perhaps more authentic storytelling choices?
That's a really good question because a lot of people are kind of amazed at some of the films that we make and the budgets that they run at. But I really think that art is obviously subjective, but I don't think the budget necessarily has anything to do with the creativity aspect of making a film. Obviously, you can do bigger, you know more professional looking things with bigger budgets, but the creative process all happens within the script and the planning of what you're doing. And I truly believe that when you're in the pre-production phase is where you're going to be doing 90% of that creative sort of process and thinking, and really that phase doesn't in this level doesn't have a lot to do with budget. It has to do with thinking and experience and the quality of the people that you have around you. So I think a project at a lower budget actually brings much more creative um, ability out in a person. It makes you think more, makes you understand the environment and the world that you're playing in, and it gives you more, I think, more options, honestly, than just throwing money at something.
Mr. Jason, before you shot a single frame, what is the fundamental question you had asked about every single element of the film, from characters to locations and the big budget director Neville Wood?
I think that the biggest thing that you really got to think about is just the story in general, not necessarily the characters, the environment, like the locations, things like that. But I really think the story itself, what's going to serve it, what are you going to do with the story, your own personal sort of vision, I guess you could say. Because ideally, I think a director kind of has to look at, especially with the feature film, look at a big picture, not just an individual sort of scene or an individual element of a film. You really have to be the one that sort of keeps it all together, like the glue that holds the story together. And I think that's one of the most important pieces to really dig into and to explore during pre-production, and even when you're on set shooting it. It's really thinking about not just the scene that you're shooting that's right in front of you, but also all of the other scenes that are surrounding it. um, uh, Becomes a super important piece of the puzzle.
What was non-negotiable core of your film? The one thing you refuse to compromise on that kept you going when the budget said, this is impossible?
I think that's a tough question because I think that with these smaller films, everybody that comes on board really has a very similar vision. They're all there to support the movie and try to get what I don't want to say I want out of it, but that's kind of what it is. The director has sort of the vision and whatnot, and everybody sort of jumps on board in order to try to make that happen the best that they can. And I don't think I've ever been up against the wall of something that we weren't able to do that we planned for. Maybe they don't really come out 100% the way you want them to. And I think that's sort of you know, the sort of crux of like having films with like special effects and things like that. It typically um, can be sort of a crapshoot in terms of like, you know, did you have time to prep the special effect and test it out and that kind of thing. Um, can really be challenging. And I guess ultimately, if you surround yourself with great people who kind of share a similar vision and a similar love for film and the filmmaking process, um, almost anything really is accomplishable on some level.
Interesting, Mr. Jason. With every dollar counting, what was one thing you spent money on that gave you the biggest return in production value?
Well, I think maybe it's not something that you see on screen per se, but I
Yes.
think the most expensive thing that we spend money on that gives us the best production value is food.
Oh,
Catering
yes.
for the cast and the crew and making sure people are fed and making them feel like you care about them because we do care about them and we want them to feel well. Not only do they need to be satiated like on set, they need to be have the energy to work, but you feed people a good meal and that they're amongst people who care, and that translates to quality filmmaking. It translates to how well they work for you on set and how much they care back. I think you'll hear a lot of horror stories about filmmakers not feeding their crew properly, things like that. And I think even if you're paying people top dollar, if the food's bad, their work ethic's gonna gonna really tank.
Indeed. And Mr. Jason, how did you attract talented actors and dedicated crew to project with little no pay? What was the currency you used instead of cash, creative freedom, a great script, or a promise of a good reel?
I actually don't try to promise anything. I what I do try to do is before I go out and cast is we try to put together the best concept and script that we can, and we sort of let it speak for itself. And I think that's a certain important thing. I think there are a lot of filmmakers out there that might overpromise, and that's sort of given independent micro budget films a bad name because they can't quite deliver on that. And I've been doing this long enough and have had enough, films in distribution and whatnot, where it's sort of I have a sort of system about that. If you don't overpromise or even promise things, and you let the project speak for itself, and you treat people well, they're going to treat you well, and they're going to want to be on board with people that work hard, have a good work ethic, and they're going to want to show their work ethic. And I think that's probably the most important piece of that um, is just sort of showing up for them, and then they'll show up for you.
Yes, definitely. Give and take, people. Give and take. What
Absolutely.
is your best story for securing credible location for little or no money budget? What's the pitch that never fails?
So the pitch that never fails is basically just find people that that have interesting places they work, whether it's your parents, siblings, friends, and then go outside of your network from there. I never necessarily look for what I want. first. I always look for what I have available to me. And then if what I have doesn't quite hit the mark for what we're trying to do, then I can kind of branch out. But again, it's the same thing with trying to attract talent. Is I don't overpromise. A lot of businesses and things like that. I've seen filmmakers. Oh yeah, we'll put your business in the credits. We'll get you lots of exposure, bring in new customers, that kind of thing. And I mean, ultimately, it doesn't, because the audience for smaller films is small and in different areas and things like that. So ultimately you have to find people that believe in you. So you're not necessarily pitching a project on promises or things like that. You're pitching yourself more than anything, and allowing them to kind of see who you are and what it is that you're going to put into a project, and they'll ultimately believe in you. I've had we did a project called Haunted Objects, where we needed a antique store, and just through walking in and talking to the owner and letting them know what we're doing, we were able to secure an amazing location for free. And I think that any filmmaker that's sort of true of heart, then has the ability to talk to people. Not everybody does, and I sympathize with that. But find somebody on your crew or team that does. It's a good speaker and presents themselves well. And I think you can get most locations you might need for next to nothing, just by branching out in your own network.
Mr. Jason, what was your most ingenious duct tape and prayer solution to a problem that would have a cost a fortune to solve properly?
Um, I think that, again, going back to pre-production, I think that's your most important stage to really solve those sorts of problems. When you get on set, you have to have a sort of like on your foot and be able to pivot quickly. And sometimes the easiest solution is to just remove the element. And I think that if something's not going right, and you're under the gun, like mostly it's under the gun with time, and usually other people's time. Sometimes it's just it's one of those the idea of like kill your darlings. You might really want this thing in the project, but it might be smarter to just get rid of it, so that way you're not wasting everybody's time trying to do something that you just couldn't afford to do. Because ultimately, most people throw money at the problems, and a good producer, I think, will be there to sort of like, let's take 5 minutes, let's take a look at this, and what can we do, and should we do it is almost more important. And I think that's just will come from experience for most people, learning what you should and shouldn't do.
Yes, for sure. And what was the one scene, character, or effect you absolutely love but had to sacrifice for the good of the overall film?
You know, um, Recently,
Hmm.
we're doing a new film right now called The Yellow Balloon, and there is a lot of effects in this film. Um, where you We have a lot of balloons in the film, and they need to be manipulated, and we've come up with several different ideas of how to do that on screen, right? And one of the more simpler forms of manipulating the balloons that we thought we would have zero problem with is using fishing line. And it's been the one of the processes for moving balloons around, sentient balloons, I should say, that just really hasn't worked. It doesn't look right. It doesn't work well. So ultimately, what we did was we started just sort of like not using it, not doing it. It was too complicated. It took too many people. And what we started to do was look into other options during our off days, to try to move balloons around, and even potentially some CGI type stuff, which most of the films that I'm working in, we like to do practical effects. So CGI is always sort of the last thing that we want to do, but it can be helpful, at times like that. And with this particular movie, there's a few scenes that we are using CGI in because of that factor. It was quicker, cheaper, and easier than wasting people's time on set.
Easier for sure. And Tell us, Mr. Jason, is it or it's the classic micro budget debate? Where did you ultimately land on prioritizing pristine sound over beautiful image when you could not afford both?
That's a good question. So I think that most filmmakers today probably have a camera or have access to a camera.
Yes.
Um, and I think that when it comes to having good picture, it mostly comes from the idea of lighting more than it does camera. And I think that's where I think most micro budget filmmakers kind of stumble in the area of image quality. Um, so sound to me is very important. Sound is also hard to get. Somebody that's of good quality. I'm thankful enough that I've been around for long enough that I know a few people that can come on board, but that didn't come at no cost. Like that was from working with people on bigger projects that had pay and things like that, and also networking, going to local film events, networking, in that way, and meeting people, doing like 48-hour film challenges and meeting people that are sort of up and coming. And also, one thing that I think that a lot of filmmakers fail to do is educate themselves in all aspects. For instance, if you're a director, I wouldn't just learn about directing. I need to know about editing. I need to know about sound, the camera, lens choices, continuity, lighting, all of the aspects of film. I think that are important to bring a project together, and sound is one of the most important. I think audiences are more apt to watch a bad quality image than they are bad quality sound.
Mr. Jason, as a horror film director, what are your short term and long term goals?
Short term goals right now is to complete the current movie that we're on, The Yellow Balloon. We just finished The Space Rodent, and we're re releasing a documentary that we did called Millennium After the Millennium. So we've changed the name to After the Millennium to make it a little easier. And those are coming out. They're in pre-order right now, so you can actually purchase it. They'll be coming out in a month or two. And long-term goals really is to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm this type of person. I just love making films, and I can't see myself doing anything else. So and I'm not a big on short films, making them anyways. I like doing features, like doing bigger projects like that. So the future I think is going to have a lot of feature films from me.
Yes, good luck to your goals, Mr. Jason. I'm looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
I think the best advice that I can give a filmmaker is to put your heart into it. And it's not just the fact of wanting to make movies, you literally have to put all of you into it. It takes so much, from the time that it takes, um, the work ethic, the learning. It just takes every piece of you, and it takes having a good support system, whether that's your immediate family, wife, girlfriend, friends, crew, whatever it might be. Lean on them, and just put all of you into a project. That's the best advice. I think everybody hears the advice of just go out and make a movie, but
Yes.
I mean, everybody these days is going out and making a movie, and I think it takes. I think it takes more. I think it takes effort, than just going and do it, like real effort.
Real effort. Yes, for sure. And thank you for that advice, Mr. Jason. And can you please recommend a book or books to influence your journey?
Absolutely. I think the most influential book for me, um, when I started out, and is still relevant to this day, is Robert Rodriguez's film school book. I think it's titled Rebel Without a Crew. And it still sits on my bookshelf, and I still look at it and reference it. There's also, I think, a video that he did where he teaches a class about it, and it has so much great advice on making a low to no budget movie. Um, that it's something I think somebody can read through, and it's entertaining to know his process, but also can be used as like a reference book to look up various pieces of information in making a film. And I think that's been a super important book for me. And another one is a movie or a book called Blink of an Eye, which can help filmmakers on set directing by learning editing. I think it's a super important book for being able to know how to put shots together and where to place the camera and keep things consistent. Um, Both of those books I think are very important.
Thank you for the recommended books, Mr. Jason. And let's talk about the 80-20 principles of filmmaking. Where did you discover that 20% of the effort yielding 80% of the results? What or was it in production, directing actors, or the editing room?
Um, I really think it's pre-production and editing. Obviously, like when you make a movie, there's a famous saying about there's three films that you make. There's the script, there's the production, and then there's the editing. And they all do end up being very different. But I do think that your best chances of making that fantastic film, or the best version of your film, starts in pre-production and ends in editing, because you can do so much in the editing room that you never thought of in pre-production or on the set. And I know people frown on the fix it in post line because you don't want to rely on that sort of ideology of fixing in post. However, there is so much you can do today in post that when the time comes to making the better version of your film, uh, post work can absolutely make or break a film. And I think that's where the most, I think the most potential a filmmaker has in creating the best film, if they've set themselves up in the best possible way during pre-production.
Micro budget filmmaking is never a solo act. How did you build a mobilized community of supporters to help you?
Another great question, really. Because I've been doing this for so long, I've seen a lot of changes in low budget film world. There used to be the ideology of, pay your dues, work your way up. It wasn't about money; it was about love of the craft, kind of thing. And I went to film school. I started film school back in the late '90s, and I saw the transition from, shooting on film to digital and that sort of thing. And There's been a dramatic shift, which isn't a bad thing. And everybody, kind of like is requiring, more pay and things like that, which makes it more complicated, I think, for, micro budget film producers. Um, but I think that at the core of all of that is the more that you give, the more that you'll get. So I typically will go out and I'll seek projects that I can work on for free, and just help people, no matter what my status is or wherever I fall within the spectrum of filmmaking and whatever I've done, staying humble and just sort of like trying to, it's that saying of rising tides lifts all boats, the more that you put in, the more you get out. And the more projects that I work on, the more people that I meet, and the more apt they are to say, "Hey, you have a project? Let me know." Even like right now, we're shooting the Yellow Balloon. My DP on that is shooting a film challenge, and she's asked me to come on to help do lighting on that, and it's just sort of a giving back, And I think that the more that we do that, the easier it is to build that sort of film community and make projects together. Um, but again, if you're promising people, you know, short hours, amazing pay, whatever it is, and you're not delivering that kind of thing, you're better off just being honest.
Yes. So, how would you motivate them, Mr. Jason?
How do I motivate them? You try to motivate them by showing them what you can do. For instance, every project that I do, I try to up myself. I try to do better than I was able to on the last one. And what that can do is you can show people, this is what I did last, and this is what we're doing now, and this is how this one's going to be better. And most times people see what you've done, and that's the thing that really gets them, involved. It's the script, the people that they're around, and like, oh, look at what they did before, and for me, like, for the past, 20 years, my personal motivation has been to, if I'm going to make films, I need to be able to get them out to the world, and they need to be able to make their budget back, whatever that budget might be. So I've made, that sort of like promise to myself: if I make a film, it needs to make its money back, and if it does that, then I can go on and make another movie. And people see that, because there's a lot of filmmakers out there where their films don't make it out to the world, or wherever they do land, it doesn't make, any money back, or it doesn't make a splash of any kind, that sort of thing. And right now we're working on the 11th film, that, feature that I've worked on. And so there's a bit of a track record there, and people see that, and that alone helps motivate them, that, this group of people, they actually complete what they set out to complete, and it gets out into the world. And there hasn't been a single film that I've started that hasn't, you know, made it out there. And people see that.
Yes. So with no marketing budget, Mr. Jason, how
Mhm.
did you get your film seen? What is your game plan for navigating the film festival world on shoestring?
So I do think that whatever budget that you do work in, you need to keep some for marketing. Whether, and I include marketing as paying back to the cast and crew by doing a cast and crew only premiere. I think that's super important, because again, that's one of those things where most people don't do, and that helps the cast and crew want to work with you again, that you care enough to do something special for them. Um, and that's part of it. And then the other part of it is having enough money to pay for festivals, and maybe doing a little bit of advertisement. Um, any kind of advertisement, sky is the limit. So you just kind of have to be careful, and you've got to budget that kind of thing out. Um, Film festivals, there's so many out there, and there's a lot of scam festivals. So you got to be careful, do your research. But there is a little bit of prestige to having won some laurels. So, yeah, there's some low hanging fruit film festivals out there, but there's also film festivals out there that have the mission of celebrating film. And, it might be a sort of participation trophy sort of festival, but at the same time, just having a selection laurel, or even an award winning, laurel from a festival, will help you to get people's attention. And I do think that that's important, um, for any filmmaker, really. It just shows you have a little bit of, more skin in the game, in terms of like what you're doing, and you care about the distribution process, and getting people excited about it. Good trailer, good artwork, a couple festival laurels, go a real long way. And then if you've got a little bit of money left, it doesn't hurt to do social media advertising, if you have an outlet. If you have a place that the movie is getting placed, whether it's, you're going through Film Hub, or a traditional distributor, or you're releasing it on YouTube yourself, whatever it might be. If you've got a little bit of money left over, even if it's just a couple $100s, to run a few ads, and you know try to get an audience, and drive them specifically to one of those places, it can go a long way as well. But you just don't want to throw all your money there, because ultimately, you know what's on screen is going to play and be more important than, doing social media advertising, where you might hit 1,000 people and only one person actually views the film. You just got to be careful with it, and smart.
Mr. Jason, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, law 101 and mental health 101, love letters in third season, and movie 101 review and music 101 and fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Jason, if a young filmmaker with a dream and an empty wallet asks you for the one piece of advice you wish you had, what would it be?
One piece of advice that I wish that I had. I think that most of the advice that I've received has been just make your movie, and I think that it's not that a piece of advice that I wish I had. It's a piece of advice that I wish I didn't have, because I just think it takes more than that. I think a lot of people are wasting their time just making their movie. I'm not saying don't do that, but most people will do that and just grab a cell phone or whatever it is and not take the time to learn. And I think knowledge is power. So I guess long answer short, read, educate yourself. There's tons of filmmaking books out there. You don't have to go to film school, but read and join other film sets. That's the best advice I think that um, I could give anybody, and then I guess that I wish I had in the beginning.
Mr. Jason Morris, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your films, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you are doing right now?
All right. Yeah. Guys, you can reach out to us at Dead End Films or at Resurrection Films. We got a new movie called Space Rodent coming out, and re-release of our documentary After the Millennium. Check it out.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Jason Morris because if you support him for sure, more and more and more empowering films to come. So, Mr. Jason, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you